On May 25, 1961, President John F. Kennedy announced to the nation a goal of sending an American safely to the moon before the end of the decade. This decision involved much study and review prior to making it public, and tremendous expenditure and effort to make it a reality by 1969. Only the building of the Panama Canal rivaled the Apollo program's size as the largest non-military technological endeavor ever undertaken by the United States. Only the Manhattan Project was comparable in a wartime setting. The human spaceflight imperative was a direct outgrowth of it. Projects Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo were each designed to execute it. It was finally successfully accomplished on July 20, 1969, when Apollo 11's astronaut Neil Armstrong left the lunar module and set foot on the surface of the moon. President Kennedy unveiled the commitment to execute Project Apollo on May 25, 1961, in a speech on urgent national needs, billed as a second State of the Union message. He told Congress that the U.S. faced extraordinary challenges and needed to respond extraordinarily. There was a lot of pressure going in on this mission. The Soviets beat us with the Lunar 2 being the first ones to successfully land on the moon unmanned. As a nation, this was a goal set before us. So on July 1969, the Apollo lunar module Eagle took off. Most people knew that going to the moon was risky. Some, outside of mission control, listening to the tense communication between the astronauts and Houston, understood what some of the urgency meant. But few, very few, knew the scope of the dangers that the crew faced. These were no longer theoretical. They were being played out in space at that very moment. It started about 4 minutes away from starting its landing sequence. The frozen display on the computer, which read 12:02, an air code was going off. Armstrong and co-pilot Buzz Aldrin had to bring their lunar module Eagle from a height of 50,000 feet, orbiting at a speed of several thousand miles per hour, down to the surface in what amounted to a controlled fall. Adjusting the lander's flight path was especially tricky. With the craft balanced on rocket thrust, changing direction required tilting the entire spacecraft slightly to one side, and as Armstrong and Aldrin were all too aware, there was only enough fuel for one landing attempt. No wonder that before he and his crewmates left for the moon, Armstrong privately concluded that they had a 90% chance of returning safely to Earth, but only a 50-50 chance of pulling off a successful landing. By the time the computer trouble quieted down and Armstrong was able to look out the window again, he discovered he had a new problem. Under the control of the computer, the lander was heading directly for a football stadium-sized crater. The surrounding area was strewn with boulders, some of which were as big as cars. Armstrong took over from the computer, steering Eagle over the giant crater and the boulder field, and flew onward, hunting for safer ground. Words of warning came from Earth. Just 60 seconds of fuel left before he would have to abort the landing. Then 30 seconds of fuel left before a mandatory abort. And then, from Aldrin, a contact light. A blue light on the instrument panel signaled that one of 3 spindly probes at the end of the Eagle's landing legs had touched the surface. The craft settled onto the Sea of Tranquility, so gently that neither man felt the impact. Armstrong shut down the engine, with about 20 seconds worth of fuel remaining. Then all was still. 7 hours later, he would emerge from Eagle, climb down its ladder, and take the momentous step the world was so excited about. As Armstrong was quoted famously for, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."